Mr. President, I join my colleagues today during Police Week to honor the work of our nation's law enforcement officers. Being a law enforcement officer is one of the toughest jobs that there is, but it's also foundational to a functioning society. We rely on these brave men and women to protect and serve our country every day. Unfortunately, many officers are being driven out by a wave of anti-police rhetoric on the heels of bad actors who operated outside of their training. We need to have trust between law enforcement and citizens. Without it, our society frays and decays. Over the course of this week, my colleagues are sharing many stories of law enforcement officers stepping up to help their fellow citizens in times of need and build the trust with the communities that they serve. We're lucky to have many brave and honorable officers in Alabama and around this country. I think about Officer Jonathan Espino from Decatur Police Department. Last year, Officer Espino responded to a medical call. A man was trying to bring his mom back to life, trying to perform CPR. Officer Espino took over for the man after he arrived and began CPR. Just before medical personnel arrived, the woman's heart started beating again and she was gasping for air. He saved her life. And I think of Officer Wesley Harrison from Abbeville Police Department. Officer Harrison received a call that a woman was in a burning building. Officer Harrison arrived on the scene minutes later and was able to carry the elderly woman out of the structure with help of another investigator. These police officers went above and beyond the call of duty, and lives were saved because of their heroism. But we know such an important job comes with great risk. Just last week, Alabama honored the 11 law enforcement officers who gave the ultimate sacrifice the last 2 years. In the last 2 days alone, across the United States of America, 4 law enforcement officers have been killed. We are forever grateful to each of these officers who have laid their lives in service for their community. How would you like to every day wake up, put a uniform on, a badge on your chest, a gun on your side, leave your family, walk out the door, knowing it might be the last time you ever walk into that home or see your family? That's what happens to these law enforcement officers every day of their career, which is why I firmly believe we need more support for law enforcement, not less. They need more training so they can be better at handling difficult situations. This is especially true as we see an uptick in mental health issues all across this country. They need targeted resources so they can recruit the best and brightest for these important roles in the community and across our country. Let's invest in the resources that they can ensure all law enforcement officers are a true good for all people across our state and across this country. Part of keeping communities safe is making sure our law enforcement officers have the authority they need to enforce compliance with our current laws. This is especially necessary as we see a flood of immigrants coming into our country illegally. Right now, unless state and local law enforcement agencies have an agreement with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, if an officer encounters an illegal alien in the course of performing their normal duties in their hometowns, they cannot arrest or detain that individual for immigration purposes. Right now, ICE arrests are low even while illegal border crossings are historically high. Under President Biden's enforcement of our immigration laws, which has fallen dramatically, arrests by ICE for the last 4 months has fell 66%. Under the Biden administration, ICE has released at least 3,700 inmates. Alarmingly, 1,800 of those were charged with convicted of crimes including homicide, rape, assault, child abuse, and more. Secretary Mayorkas recently limited the places where ICE and the CBP can enforce the law. Many federal law enforcement officers fear that the Biden administration will further restrict where they can do their jobs. If the federal government will not enforce the immigration laws, our state and local law enforcement should be empowered to do so. That's why today I introduced the Empowering Law Enforcement Act, which grants inherent authority to state and local officials to enforce our nation's immigration laws. Additionally, my bill will give federal authorities the flexibility to extend the amount of time they can detain criminal aliens. If a state or local law enforcement entity is detained, an alien in this bill would be required by Homeland Security to take that illegal alien into custody upon request from that entity. And the bill ensures state and local authorities can get reimbursed for the cost related to the incarnation and transportation of the alien. The Empowering Law Enforcement Act is about common sense. If the Biden administration won't force the law, let's empower those that will. I urge my colleagues to support this practical solution to a very real and very serious problem. I yield the floor.